Hello, today is your day to actually wake up to hope at the table of redemption. We are in season 1, building bridges of hope and redemption in crises. Go. Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you to my next episode of The Table of Redemption. I am Rasheen Jameson Richardson, host, founder, producer, editor of all the content and all the above. I am here taking my framework on the road, so to speak, in the collaborative refinement phase of being able to understand the human element. So basically, coming from behind the desk, writing about it, or coming from behind the pen and putting pen to paper and trying to figure it out. I am talking to my colleagues, the closest people who've been there with me through the journey. Today, I have with me Krista. She's in the doctoral program, the Ph.D. program at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. She was there as a peer reviewer of my work. She was there as a colleague sitting to my right and to my left. She's been there the entire year of my program. So we both are with Dr. Linda Nathan. Dr. Linda Nathan is the class that I took when I first came to Harvard, and she walked in the door and said, okay, we're going to do a framework. I wasn't ready to start a framework. I'm like, why? Okay, but every day she kept saying we're going to do a framework and framework and framework. This is the class. And so I just said, okay, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Let's do leadership redemption. And from there, Krista has been a critical part in my ear and in my soul and being a part of the community in which this was built in. And so I had to have her here today so you guys can see her and experience her the way I do. So Krista, tell me, what brings you to the table of redemption?
Well, I mean, we were just saying, I think ultimately it's you who's bringing me to the table of redemption. I think as we'll talk more in the next hour or so, I'm sure.
Mhm.
But for me, connection and community is central to redemption. And so, um, for me, it's my connection with you and the connection with the work that you've been working on over the last year that makes me really excited to be part of this and also to learn from the other people that you've been speaking to because I do feel like at Harvard there's a lot of sub communities, and so it's always a special opportunity to get a chance to connect across different sub communities. So, like you said, I'm in the PhD program. I know you're talking to some people in the Ed Leadership program and the various master's programs. So, I'm really excited to hear the conversations that you have with them because they're not always conversations that I'm part of.
Yes, yes. Well, everyone, Krista's in the PhD program. So PhD is different from EDLD. So PhD is a 6-year full-length program, and she will have the most longevity as far as my podcast guests are. So EDLD is 3 years. It comes with a residency. So you will have seen, or you may see throughout the time their conversation and their journey. And then the master's, I have also a 2-year, someone from the 2-year master's, and then the 9 months. So I was in a 9-month advanced or accelerated master's residential program on the site. The 2-year master's program is online. And then everyone else, we filing in line and we'll see each other in passing. But Krista is in class with me, like in the trenches with me. So we were able to be there together. So one of the things that Krista did as well, she worked on her own work. So Krista, can you tell us about some of your initiatives, your experiences in education, in leadership that brings you to the table? Also, Krista is a teaching fellow, which is a pretty serious accomplishment at Harvard. Okay. I have to always blow my guest head up. She is sitting here so calm. Okay. But Krista is bad to the bone. I just want the people to know We are talking about someone who cares deeply about the world, deeply about race, deeply about culture, deeply about kindness, and deeply about children and the education systems that we are in now. So, Krista, tell us a little bit about your platforms, what you do, what you've done, and so we can know more about you.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a suburb of Los Angeles and I went to college in St. Louis, Missouri, and I went to Washington University in St.
Okay.
Louis.
Okay.
And I moved there right when Ferguson was happening. I started in August of 2014. So it was 3 weeks after Michael Brown had been murdered, and the city was really an epicenter for a lot of what has since become Black Lives Matter. So there were activists coming from all over the world to St. Louis. The Department of Justice had done an investigation, had started an investigation in the years that I was living there, investigating the St. Louis policing practices, finding them to be unconstitutional. There was counter protesters, so we had white supremacists coming through our neighborhood. And so that was really my introduction to professional work, beyond being a student myself. And so, as a result of all of this happening in St. Louis when I was living there, I lived there for 6 years. There was a lot of money that was coming in to look at equality, racism, education, health in St. Louis. So it was a really special time to be there, in the sense that a lot of people were talking about things that sometimes weren't talked about in that community and nationally. Like it turned into a national conversation with a lot of subsequent events and previous events. But so that really has shaped my lens, I think, on education and on my work is yeah, how it all started for me, I think was really through a lens of racial justice. And that that continues to be my lens.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is wonderful. Setting matters so much. I'm not sure if I knew that. The setting of how
Hmm.
your work sits or is anchored. As you walk in
Yeah.
Hugsy, I did not know that. Can you
Yeah.
talk more specifically about the actual work that you do in terms of maybe research interests, what you're looking at? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, in that regard.
Yeah. I'm really interested. So I do qualitative research,
Okay.
and I research teachers and teaching,
Oh,
and the teaching profession and the teaching sort of circumstances. And I mostly focus on the contemporary moment. I've taken history classes as well, but mostly I'm interested in questions about um, how we make teaching as an occupation sustainable so
ooh,
that racial justice is possible.
yeah.
And I think the teaching occupation or teaching profession is a really small piece of that puzzle,
Mhm,
because there is sort of inequality across domains.
mhm,
One of those domains being education, like that's one of the ways that I imagine a lot of people on your podcast has experienced firsthand,
mhm,
um, being a lever for like real opportunity or the opposite.
mhm,
Um, and so I'm interested in the social and cultural dimensions of teaching and why it's been hard to really invest in teachers, in terms of salary, but also in terms of power and decision-making power and trust and time. A lot of teachers right now are really stressed. Um, and that's been especially true since COVID.
mhm,
And that's especially true for teachers of color.
mhm,
So, yeah, just trying to think about how we imagine and construct the school as a workplace
That's good.
towards justice.
It sounds like it needs the leadership redemption framework to come there.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm so excited about your work. I think it's really connected, like the emotional dimensions
Yes.
of working with you.
Yes, because you
Yeah.
were there when I kept saying, I want to do this for I don't want, you know how people study climate change and they study the weather or they study um um recycling or they study, no, I want it's for the leader. So that's why
Yeah.
it's strictly human. It's strictly when I say resilience, I want to talk about human resilience. So if I talk about intuition, human intuition so that we can get down to what is bugging us or why we have not had a larger margin in our ability to sustain ourselves or be sustained by the systems that we're in. And it's a top down. Many people address this from bottoms up as though it's the teacher's fault or the parents' fault or the kid's fault. But what I'm doing and what I love about what you're talking about is at the systems level that we begin to just discuss with leaders, top leaders who are delving into these topics, but they're behind the scenes. They're not at liberty to like unleash and be able to actually bring it into reality because they're within systems that are within systems, and those systems are within
Hmm.
systems, and then those systems are within the more systems. And so leadership redemption says, okay, let's just go ahead and cut out a lot of the systems. Can we just talk? Can we
Hmm.
just literally get into the bottom line of what's burning you out as a leader?
Hmm.
Because I'm sure if we're able to do that, the leaders themselves have the level of liberation they need to now have the conversation with their teacher leaders, their administration. And the reason why I love what you're saying about your work and also the racial injustice, to me, they go hand in hand. And one, all the podcast guests are talking about education. I know we're in a graduate school of education, but it is kind of like more the universal palette that we can paint the picture from because everyone's been to school in some form or another, or everyone has a parent that's teaching them and educating them. Someone has a mentor or a coach. Someone has something that they're learning from, learning about, or giving that knowledge away. When you discuss the components of the racial side, it's almost like you have two you have two children on your hand. Okay, you have the education child, then you have the racial child, and they both are like maybe not getting along all the time. So it's like you're the parent, right, that has to say, okay guys, sit down, I'm going to find out what works for both of us, for the both of you, so we can get on our vacation, let's say. And I think
Hmm.
what leadership redemption is trying to do is make sure we can all get to our vacation, but we can't get there because everyone is not well. And so
Hmm.
that's what I want to do. When you discussed about your work and the what you're looking at in terms of teacher sustainability, I'm curious to know what are some of the things you may be finding, or what have you found yourself because you were a teacher.
Hmm.
You were in leader, you were and are a teacher. So from your
Hmm.
own lens, maybe not maybe research, but from your own lens, what are some of the areas that you found it difficult to sustain while you were
Hmm.
or while you're doing this work?
Yeah, I actually started out as a paraprofessional and then I became a classroom teacher and I've worked in elementary schools mostly. I've worked a little bit in early childhood and a little bit in middle school, but and a little bit in high school, but mostly in elementary school. Um, and I'm just wrapping up the data collection phase of one of my first projects, and it was an interview study. I've interviewed, I think it was 85 classroom teachers, educators, broadly, including paraprofessionals, reading specialists, um, various subjects. So I can speak a little bit just from what I've been hearing from those people.
I would love it.
Um, yeah, it's mostly a lot of people feel that COVID was a real turning point from the people that I've been talking to. And in terms of burnout, um, a lot of people are concerned about children's well-being.
Mm,
Um, and and I think that's something that we don't necessarily know, at least conclusively why it seems that children are struggling. And some people I talk to were like, listen, every generation people say like what, oh, the kids, the youth, it's like this every generation. But a lot of other people, I would say that was the minority that was like, it's a repeat of the past. And a larger number of people were like, there's really something concerning happening with children
Mhm.
and their well-being, especially their mental and emotional well-being.
Yeah.
Um, And so I think your question was about burnout, right?
Yeah.
And I think that um, I took a professional development course on mindfulness in the classroom, and they brought up this idea of co-regulation, which
Mm.
is the idea that we tend to pick up on the emotions of people that we're around. And that's true no matter who we're around. It's also true when we're around children and vice
Mm.
versa. And so when either we are not well or the children we're working with are not well, we can pick that up. We can sense that. Um, and so I think that really connects to some of the burnout that the adults are facing in
Yeah.
the profession is just um, it's hard to be around people who are struggling.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that is very interesting to me. I never thought about it in that lens. I come from the music education and arts background. And so therefore, when I had students, I had them 75 to 80 at a time. Like in a particular, so we had 7 periods a day, or when we did block schedule, it was 4 periods a day, but that means more students. Then there were piano classes where it was smaller, or music appreciation, or but most it was performance. Then I moved on to being the nonprofit founder of Legacy School of Performing Arts and was able to scale it across, I call it pockets of the earth, small rural communities, partner with businesses and organizations and churches that would allow me to have space, rent space, or partner. Therefore, when I came across children, you know, their emotional state was very serious. And so I felt more fortunate because I had an arts background to try to like maybe you
Hmm.
know, buffer a lot of the challenges and kind of like give them like a pick me up. So
Hmm.
when you're speaking, if the teachers that you are interviewing or or a sample of those teachers are not able to have that access, then it's almost like it's their baseline all the time.
Hmm.
Burnout is their baseline. Burnout is the student's baseline. But I'm curious to see in the future how that shapes up in terms of what we can do in terms of leadership redemption, because the framework itself talks about the leadership purpose and being able to reestablish or repurpose the purpose. It next discuss about your sustainability. How do you sustain your impact in those environments? Most of the teachers love what they do and they love this environment. I mean, they love this profession, but the environment and the duration of it sometimes has a negative impact on how well they can still be in love. So as we discuss this, what do you think makes you resilient? As you do this
Hmm.
work, you have okay, so let's back up. Krista is herself first. Then Krista is her mother's child. Then then Krista, do you have sisters and brothers?
Yes, I am an older sister,
Okay, Krista's a sibling. Then Krista is are you a fiance or
a partner. Yeah, a
a,
partner.
a partner? Okay, then she's a teacher, okay, teacher leader, then leader. Okay, then Krista goes on to be a Ph.D. student. Then she's a teaching fellow. She has all these things. So asking her about sustaining her impact is not a frivolous question. And asking her these questions are not just random. It's me observing my friend throughout the time. And even sometimes the smile she has on her face is a consistent smile. So for you, that's a good question about resiliency and how do you define it? How do you live it out? And what makes it so What makes you you in this question?
It's such a good question and something I've really been thinking about. I think that's been something that I think as things are changing, my mantra has been like, okay, if the world is changing, I am gonna change too. And I
Okay,
think that
okay.
connects with the resiliency question of just the question of because at Harvard over the past couple of months, there have been a lot of changes and a lot of, confusion and chaos. And so um, resiliency and my own resiliency has risen more to the top of my mind.
Ooh.
Um, yeah, because I think I was feeling like it needs to be a priority when things are feeling hard in the environment. And so concretely, I joined a new yoga studio and I'm
Okay.
very excited. And I have been really fortunate to have access to various types of healthcare, including acupuncture.
Okay.
Um, and I really have been grateful for the various, just that people have so much wisdom. I was never someone who was thinking I would go to acupuncture. I was referred to acupuncture by my doctor, and it has just been so interesting because it is a completely different way of thinking about health and healing. Um,
Mm,
and I think I've been reflecting on that a lot. It's a lot about, stability and um, rejuvenating, like your body's natural healing properties. And so I've been thinking about that a lot also in the context of teaching and children's well-being too, of just like if we can sort of like water the seeds of wellness,
yes.
then then we'll be in a better position. So I think just generally getting more in touch with my own uh life and the people around me, talking a lot with friends and
Mhm.
um listening, I think, to the wisdom that people are bringing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This is amazing how, okay, so to my listening or viewing audience, okay, Krista is basically, from what I'm hearing, saying that her resilience is rooted and anchored in her well-being, the well-being of health. I would say the word vitality, maybe.
Hmm. My
Mental.
acupuncturist talks about sparkle,
Oh, okay, talk about
staying
that. Talk
connected to
about,
your
I've never heard that.
sparkle.
That's a part of resilience. You have to sparkle and shine. Go ahead, keep talking.
No, no, I'm just offering that as I
Okay.
love that.
So it's that level of resilience that sparkles. Um, and versus if it's not sparkling, meaning other part is dull.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's almost like it's giving us something to redeem. We redeeming our sparkle. Let's just say that, right? Me and Krista, we're just having a wonderful conversation, okay? But anyway, so her resilience, I've heard this before, but I've never heard it this way. Resilience for her is rooted in a healthy mental, physical, and spiritual, I'm just saying spiritual right now,
Yeah.
well-being. Because, in other words, how people say you cannot drink from an empty cup.
Hmm.
You can't pour from an empty well. No, 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 hold on. You can't pour from an empty cup or drink from an empty well.
I understand.
Okay, okay. But the
And
cup,
I think that so much of that wellness is from connection. I think that's
okay.
the piece that I would add, that it's not just myself, but it's the connection to nature, connection to people, connection
Mm,
to um, things that feel embodied. And I think that's especially true now with all of the screens. And a lot of the teachers that I've been talking to are concerned about AI and what AI is going to mean for children's well-being.
mm,
And I've just been thinking in my own head about the importance of the arts, what you're bringing up as well about like as someone with an arts background, you were able to bring um, uplift, to the kids you were working with. And I do really think that that is going to be increasingly important. That that the process of creation is life-giving,
Yeah.
and that is important for the kids that are struggling.
Ooh, you have to say that again. The process of creation is what?
It's life-giving. Yeah.
Yes, I've never heard it like that. So for me, it seems like resilience, if I could sum it up, resilience is not just internal, it's external
Yeah.
for you.
Exactly.
Because there are a lot of guests
Yeah.
who go internal about strong, hard, breaking through a barrier, leveling up, and all of that. But what
Hmm.
I love what you're bringing to this is to me a warmth in terms
Hmm.
of I need what my godmama has been saying, Pastor Cox, a support system around me to be continued resilience. Okay.
Hmm.
I also consider that sustaining impact. Okay. But that's what makes us resilient is because the pillars of the framework has to go one builds upon another, upon another, upon another to help us be to remain one, not the
Hmm.
same. I'm not after sameness, I'm after oneness.
Hmm.
Sameness is I'm trying to be the same as you know. I'm trying to be one with you. So right now on our podcast, we are one. You have your screen, I have my screen. It may be different, but we are one. So in
Hmm.
terms of your definition or factors of what you consider resilience to me makes it one, meaning that
Hmm.
internally and externally combined makes up a level of resilience that we can offer hope to leaders, not to discount anything when it's time for you to decide how resilient you are. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, yeah. And it's all sort of synergistic because my own personal wellness can, through sort of co-regulation,
Hmm.
not in the scientific sense, but in the emotional sense, bring more stability to various communities and relationships that I mean relationships broadly. The person I see on the street, if I smile and say, "Hi, like, how are you?" That's a different interaction than if I'm on my phone,
Hmm.
and so yeah, I do think it's all related.
Yeah. Can you take us back to where, in terms of your foundation, how did you, so when I'm discovering when I talk to people, when I talk to my guests and my colleagues and friends and sister friends about their resilience, I'm finding it comes from somewhere. So
Hmm.
can we talk about maybe your upbringing? So to me, the being a redeemed leader starts like maybe down there somewhere that we never looked at our resilience from the bottom up to see what's at the root system of what keeps making us so strong, what keeps making Krista come back and over. Do you have models, mentors? Do you have siblings, cousins, people around you, relatives that feed into or help you see these levels of resilience that you have?
Yeah, I do think it comes from my family as well. I think growing up, it's interesting because what you think about when you look back is not necessarily what you think about in the moment. But right now, when you're asking this question, the the two things that are coming to mind are my family and the nature that I grew up around.
Okay.
I grew up near the beach, and so the ocean is always changing and
Okay.
is grounding. And I think as I've grown older, I find myself often when I need to think about things or I mean also for my research. Like this is like if I need to be creative, being in nature is really helpful. Um, and also I do think it comes from art and spirituality. I think I've I I'm trying to read the book War and Peace right now, but I got the wrong version. It turns out there's a lot of versions and Harvard Library has them all. So I just got Tolstoy's War and Peace, but it was the first draft that he published 10 years before the other draft. But I do think I in terms of resiliency, stories about people is really nourishing.
Mhm.
And those could be stories told by my family, they could be stories that I read. Um, and also being in nature. Um, we just read Animal Farm, my partner and I, and it was so interesting to read it now with
Mhm.
everything going on and just like giving the lens of like we're not the only ones. It might feel like things are crazy, but there's art has a way of communicating
Yes,
emotionally across distances.
yes. Would you
Yeah.
like to say hello to your partner?
Hello.
You
Hi,
want
Shivam.
Okay. What about your mom? Any family, any mentors you want to say hey to while we're here?
Yeah. Yeah, shout out to my mom and my dad and my sister. We're about to meet up in Wisconsin. My sister's living in Wisconsin, so we're gonna have a little family trip there in a few days, which will be really fun.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hope you're soon. Yeah, so that was really warm for me to know more about you as a leader. That's what I want to go for when we how to scale that though. If if the research says principals of schools only have 3 minutes per decision, right? Or if
Hmm.
you're the superintendent of the school district, you have less than that. Or if you're the CEO, you have even less than that. So the higher you go in your profession, C-suite, and any other suite that you have, is saying that you don't have time for these kinds of beautiful dialogues. So that's why I would love to take time in throughout the research process. And I'm speaking this to you too, because you are behind the scenes doing research. So if you ever find out any ways that can enhance what our dialogue and any way to um make it more real when we're trying to find out about each other, what you just shared with me made it more real because I have a guest, Scott Bauer. He grew up in California next to the ocean.
Hmm.
Cecilia, yes, when I did hers, her analogy of resilience was the ocean.
Hmm. There's something
So
about water. We just went swimming in a lake yesterday and we were like, man, there is just something about water that it brings a lot of people joy.
yes, so that's
Yeah.
what that happened. Going back, kind of like my framework is kind of like dealing with what a colleague of mine um told me about self-organized criticality in terms of being able to go a little bit deeper, to me slowly submerging a little bit and looking at the hourglass, looking at the hands of time to let us know, how did we arrive to the people we are? How do we arrive to that transformation that we are achieving? And so to be able to couple, well, have this triplet of an episode where just yesterday, that Scott said he was grew up in Los Angeles, ocean right there. Okay, then Cecilia talked about the beauty of the ocean, and to me, the element of the ocean being the form of resilience that in Taoism is considered one of the inner quietness, that one that's roaring and changing things. You may not be doing a gong or playing a timpani in the symphony, but you are making change as a leader nonetheless. And
Hmm.
what she posited is that in Taoism, it's basically saying water has one drip a day. Just if it just is slow drips, it carves out caves, it carves out
Hmm.
rocks, it carves out in shapes. And so that's one of the things I love about being able to have this dialogue with you and with my colleagues, and some of the things that we might not be able to do when we're passing by trying to grade papers, or you trying to grade papers and trying
Hmm.
to make evaluations and rubrics, that this is really amazing. So as terms of resilience, i'm I'm loving the way you have been able to make it, to me, visible well-being. So someone listening to the podcast can say, okay, I want to get a massage today as a part of me being resilient. You're not, I know you're on a tight budget. I know you're probably trying to save money for Christmas, but I think you should be resilient enough to get a spa treatment, even if it's like maybe not maybe not an hour, maybe 30 minutes. But as a leader, I think you should be resilient enough to do it. If I'm looking through Krista's lens, right? I think you should be resilient enough to care about your emotional well being in terms of how well you are able to have the capacity to listen to someone else going through their suffering when you feel like, you're dying on the inside. You're like, can we kind of cut this short? because I'm dwindling down, but finding ways to do it in love. So, in other words, if we are able to look at resilience from a different lens, I think you'll get a better understanding that resilience is closer than you think it is. You being stronger, or like Krista said earlier, she was putting her resilience more at the top of the list, at the top priority of what's going to help her make it through the rest of her time at Hugsy and beyond. The
Hmm.
next part of the framework, do you have anything you want to say?
I will say that I think the piece about wellness is it's commodified, and
Ooh,
that isn't helpful. Like, the like there's a lot of critiques of, wellness culture and wellness being a commodity of like the massages and the facials and the IV drips and the like, I don't know, cryotherapy chambers. Like there's a lot of health being commodified, but I think it's more about like um being able to meet to have your needs being met, and when your needs are met, then you're resilient. Like resilience is an effect.
ooh,
Like it happens when we're well. Um, but the problem I think that we're having now is that wellness feels and is out of reach for too many people.
yes.
And that I don't know the solution to.
Mhm.
Um, and it's troubling
Mm.
that a lot of people don't have time, or a lot of people are around other people who themselves are not well. And so I don't want to be a downer, but it
No.
is, it's troubling that I mean, I think the Surgeon General was talking about a loneliness epidemic.
Ooh.
And and so I think that's connected to resilience. I think when you're lonely, loneliness is almost the opposite of resilience to me.
Okay.
And so yeah, I don't know what the solution is to that, but I do think that if we're not well as individuals and as teams and communities, then it's going to be very hard to be resilient.
It is. I'm glad that you brought that up. The commodity piece, the scarcity piece. That's
Hmm.
how I would frame it, as
Hmm.
scarcity or lack of access. You gave me such pause when you put that in there. When we talked about the arts or visual arts in the book you're reading, you painted a nice picture for me to hang my hat on as I'm finishing up, this collaborative phase of the framework, to really pause for a second and give light to the population of people who may be trying to live through this society, but they can't find anything in them that's affordable, anything that's sustainable, anything that is doable, actually doable. So when we
Hmm.
talk about the things that we enjoy, or vacations, or when we talk about spa treatment, or when we talk about acupuncture, or when we talk about those extra things, um, I don't want to sound like it's something we can do on a whim, because it's not. We are here basically saying, because I want to be careful to say that as well, because we are at Harvard and it
Hmm.
carries a connotation that you can afford it, or that it's automatic for you, or that you should be resilient, or you should be grateful. When what we know to be so is that it's harder at Harvard a lot, trying to literally keep up your well-being in an elite space that is worldwide. It is never going away, right? So I'm glad that Krista brought this up in this capacity, to give me pause, to give a shout out to all the leaders, all the teacher leaders, all the parents who are leaders, all the spouses who are leading change, all the people on the front lines, that you are doing this work, but you may not have access. And what Krista is saying, which I love, she said, and we might not know the solution. We might, don't think since we're at Harvard, we're here trying to be a know-it-all or a do-it-all. But these discourse, we having a discourse and a dialogue around what we can do, whether it be in the near future or something that we can do down the road, but we want you to know that we are keeping you in mind. And when I say that, I'm speaking for myself as well, because I'm coming to this platform of crisis leadership, rising from a disaster. I had been sick for 7 years straight, could not get rid of a disease, anything, a stroke or anything. So I don't want to sit on a platform like we've arrived anywhere. So I love the way Krista did that, because it gave me such humility and I felt it down in my soul. So Krista, when we're going forward to trying to find trying to even think about a solution,
Hmm.
I think that a part of what we can contribute is is helping people understand how to obey the human intuition. So
Hmm.
that goes back into um it goes back into parts of the leader who you're sensing that you're about to burn out, or you're sensing that you're about to quit, or you're sensing that you can't take anymore, or you're sensing that, um, you're about to crash and burn. Do you have
Hmm.
any thoughts on how leaders can pay attention to their human intuition and kind of like measure out, what it is
Hmm.
they need to be doing along the way?
Yeah. Well, that requires you to know yourself. I mean, like Shakespeare, right?
Ooh.
Like, know thyself. And that I find for me is easier when I feel connected physically. And so, like, working out or walking or doing yoga or physical activity helps me stay more connected to what I need.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's easy to like tune out for me the signal, because it's like it's a lot of reading and writing and
Yes.
sitting. And so it's easy to be like, oh, whatever, like I'm hungry, but the real important thing is this email, something like that. So, um, and I think the cumulative effect of that can be where you can't predict when you're going to burn out because the signals aren't signaling.
Yes.
Um, And then the other piece of it, so staying connected to your body, I think is important. I mean, my background is also as a dance. I did dance and I did theater, and so I think
Yes,
I'm
I
also
remember.
speaking as like like of course I believe that that's super important. And then the other thing is to notice in other people
Oh,
when we think that they might be burning out or
okay.
close or at risk. And it's a balance because, of course, you want to believe people, but there's also an element of like, if there's a culture of I'm fine, sometimes the leader has to take the step to putting boundaries,
Yeah.
like, at, and it's also related to, I think, dignity at work too, of like, we shouldn't be putting in everything because then there's nothing left. So, yeah, having sustainable working conditions, I think, can go really far to not burning people out.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
clear expectations
Hmm.
and a plan. Because you can't just tell people like, don't work too hard, you know. But if you don't work too hard, then the kids aren't going to learn to read. Like there has to be it's like you're not going to like get people to be like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I put in my 8 hours. I'll stop now." You got to have a plan. There have to
And
be
the
systems.
standardized test is next week.
Yeah, it's like you gotta know, like it has to be logical for people to take a
Yeah.
break because they're not just gonna do it. I mean, maybe they will. That's really good self-control, but I struggle to do that. If I feel like it's all on me, but the leader is also telling me to take a break, I'm like, well, it's a either or then. It's me
Yeah.
or the kids that I'm serving, and that I'm not comfortable making that choice. That's a
Yeah.
terrible choice to make.
Yeah. Yeah. This is giving me food for thought in terms of what you're saying is connectivity.
Hmm.
Connectivity is the key. In other words, if you're in what I'm seeing in the artistic realm, if your human intuition is unplugged,
Exactly.
yeah.
Or even the volumes turned down.
Woo, woo, woo,
you
Say it
know?
again. Say it
Like,
again, honey.
and we live in noisy environments. So
Yes.
if the volume of your own intuition is down, it can get drowned out by other things.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And even in dance, if you are on point too long, you start getting even hair fractures. So at
Yeah.
some point, you have to know when the incline, decline,
Yeah.
recline. You have to understand the ratios and understand the spaces and understand those components. And so when we talk about point, we talk about point shoes in ballet. We're talking
Hmm.
about also all the areas that you are at your optimal. You're on a very basically you're walking a fine line with
Yeah.
your life as a ballerina is. And so what we want to make sure is that you understand those analogies of being unplugged. If you are not able to obey your own intuition, it's because something's unplugged. Well, Krista is saying that and then the volume may be turned down too low, meaning that you might have to retreat. You might have to retreat to be able to understand your own inner voice. So if we're talking to teachers and teacher leaders, and we're talking to superintendents, C-suite people, C-suite leaders, execs, and all these in all the positions, what we're saying to you is this may be a nice season for you to carve out some time to listen to yourself, to carve out
Hmm.
some time to maybe take a step back, or what I consider a step out on a balcony, to be able to hear your own thoughts. Because in the times of crisis that we're in, you're the first point of contact, which is what the leadership redemption is after. Leaders who on the front lines of crises, you're the first point of contact, but when they contact you, you can't even hear you.
Hmm.
And so now you're walking around feeling like you're inadequate, and you feel like you might not be up to speed. But if you pay attention to your resilience, your purpose, you be able to stay in your impact and be able to obey your human intuition. I think we're getting somewhere. Chris has already talked about well-being throughout the podcast, which is a critical part of how we're going to stay alive. When we talk about lifespan, Krista, can we just delve in a little bit about what you think the difference is between just having well-being and quality of life when you're leading this work?
The first thing that there were two things that came to mind, and I'll just say them because I don't know. But one of them is the difference between lifespan and well span, I think. I'm not a
Yes,
doctor. I want to, but
yes,
I think that's something that is a medical term. People listening probably will know more than me,
it
but
is
the idea
though.
being that sometimes you can live longer than you are well, I
Hmm.
think is the idea. And the idea is we want to extend people's well span.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's one thing that I was thinking about related to burnout. Maybe burnout is like you're still there, you're still alive in the
You're hanging
role, but you're
on.
not well. Things are
You're
not
blinking, but you're not thinking.
yeah, yeah. Um, and the other one, what was the other thing I was thinking of? The other one is the idea that like I don't know where this idea comes from, but that people have multiple deaths. One is that when their physical body dies, and the other one is when the last person who knew them dies, or
Mhm.
something, that the legacy of your. And so I think about that in terms of leadership, that part of what leaders are doing, not just leaders, just relationships in general, is sort of investing
Mhm.
in a lifespan that can extend beyond our own physical form, both in terms of duration of time, but also in terms of like scope. That sometimes when ideas, we carry ideas from other people, and though they don't know that their ideas are being carried forward in us. And
Mm.
so, in a sense, that's the lifespan I mean, of the idea,
It
that is
is.
like, um, yeah, continuing and can travel really far distances, especially at a place like Harvard, I think, where people do come from a lot of places. um, yeah, that then we can carry that forward to our own respective locations. I know you said you just moved home to Florida, so there's that uh pollination happening.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I love the way you curated that. To me, it's a curation of the thoughts and ideas of where you're putting it together. I usually say on the show that lifespan is the difference between healthcare, the healthcare policy you buy for health insurance, and then life insurance for end of life. And
Uh-huh.
what we're doing in between each of them is living our best life, trying to, knowing that there's going to be end of life somewhere, and we need to be protected there. But what you helped me do just now was kind of like, um, you helped me give a spectrum. You helped me kind of like draw like a little string in between this one and that one, and in between, which is considered to me succession
Mhm.
and legacy and all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
topics, that we could have about at the end of the day. We could talk about purpose all we want. We could talk about resilience, sustaining impact. We could talk about human intuition. We can do all this conversation, but where's it going to end? Who
Hmm.
are we changing? Like, so throughout the podcast, as you're talking about connectivity, to me, this is the more bang for the buck. Who is going to carry on our hopes and our dreams? And I love the way you talked about how other people's ideas live within us. They may not even know it. And when you talked about how it travels with us as well, I never thought about it like that. Because if
Hmm.
that is the case, then we could kind of like take some of the anxiety off. We could take a little bit of anxiety off. Also, to those teachers that we were mentioning earlier that you surveyed or interviewed, they can take a little bit of pressure off. Is that because when the brain talks about if you taught it, they caught it. So a
Hmm.
lot of it's redundancy sometimes when you're checking on people once and twice and three times and four times when they may already have the message that you've given them. They just need time and space to do it. But if people are looking like they are burnt out, feeling burnt out, you can't help but check on people and go overboard. But it's
Hmm.
also a way to sustain your own lifespan if you understand the human makeup, the brain function, and the way we will process and carry on ideas, that we can relax a little bit, because sometimes we are overextending ourselves and going into overkill in trying to take care of people that will be taken care of, because we're going to leave this earth and people are going to be back here still doing what they need to do, still living their best life, or coming up with a version of it. So I think it would behoove us to think about lifespan, and build spectrums in between what it is we're trying to live for and what it is we were willing to die for, is what I would say, in
Hmm.
that regard. Um, so my final question, for the framework is, do you have thoughts on spirituality? What is your spirituality? And then how do you think spirituality impacts leaders, especially in times of crises, in terms of burnout, in terms of being able to find redemption and hope, right? As you are facing the day as a leader.
That's a great question and something I've thought a lot about. I studied a lot of different religions
Okay.
in college, and um, I was I was raised Christian Scientist,
Mhm.
which is a pretty niche religion now. You're not allowed to convert people as part of the religion, so there's not many new Christian Scientists that uh, are happening. But basically, the history of Christian Science is it was created by a woman in the late 19th century. She was not allowed to go to Harvard because she was a woman, and her siblings went to Harvard. Her brother educated her, and reading her work, it sounds a lot like philosophy, but she packaged it in a religion,
Mhm.
which is so interesting. So it was sort of a feminist take on the Bible way back when. Um, and so that was sort of my introduction. It's very metaphysical. She drew a lot on Eastern practices as well. Like she studied the Bhagavad Gita and um, different spiritual traditions, and then sort of she studied Plato, so it was very like interwoven in terms of the ideas that she drew on
Mhm.
in that. And so I was always very interested in spirituality and meaning.
Mhm.
Um, since I was a young child and in college, I got the opportunity to study different spiritual traditions as well, mostly on my own. I would read books and,
Mhm.
talk to people. I was always super interested in talking to people about, if they were willing, like how they grew up and what they believed. And I think now, as in where I am in my life now, I'm very interested in spirituality in various forms. I continue to be interested. I think that what I was talking about with nature and wellness and healing and all of these things, I think are codified in different places in different spiritual traditions.
Mhm.
And I think of spirituality as a language that people use to talk to each other intergenerationally about things that are hard to find the words for.
Woo!
Um,
Yes.
and so different things can be said in different languages. So yeah, it's definitely something that's interesting to me. And I love that you're talking to leaders about their spiritual sort of bent. I think a lot of people also are not interested in the question, and then that's also great.
Correct.
I think that's itself super interesting. People being like, oh, take it or leave it. Like, it's fine.
For real.
But I do think my interest in spirituality definitely connects to my research because I started off by saying I am a qualitative researcher, and qualitative researchers often study people and meaning,
Mhm.
and the meanings that people either make or bring to their lives. And I think a lot of those methods were first developed in the study of religion and spirituality. And so, as I've been talking to teachers, a lot of what I talk to them about is, what they're proud of, what they feel are challenges, how they feel respected or not respected, and a lot on the sort of emotional and um I mean the academic term that I use is symbolic, but basically like the emotional and social and mental dimensions, cultural cognitive dimensions of
Mhm.
life. And I think that is really spirituality. I think
Yeah.
yeah, that different places and different times have created different languages to talk about this.
Mhm. I love the way you summed it up as a language because I think that's something people can hang their hat on. And I think it's an unspoken language far too much. That's why I wanted to make it a pillar in leadership
Mm,
redemption to where we can make sure leaders are talking about it. So far, the podcast has uncovered that we have Christians, that you'll hear me sitting with my colleagues that are Christian. I am of the Christian faith, right? And Pentecostal or Church of God in Christ, or well, I just say the black church. Okay, we do the
mhm,
tambourine clapping and we do the shouting and stuff like that. And the good preacher, we say, "Oh Lord," like we just talk back to the preacher. Okay, but then we also have Hindu and the
mhm,
karmic circle present. We also have atheism that's present. We also have Baha'i that's present, Muslim that's present. We have Buddhists that are present. And it has been such a beautiful palette to listen and draw from and
mhm,
understand. And if leaders are empowered enough in their leadership to understand the spiritual makeup of who's on their watch,
mhm,
like that would be the most powerful component for a leader to walk in and feel redeemed and feel like they can draw upon a spiritual practice or a interfaith or interspiritual way of helping their team win, because it is a viable solution when we're in the midst of crises or people are preparing for tests. They used to say prayer will all, as long as there are tests, prayer will always be in school. Okay, in some form or another. And to me, that also draws on a person's heritage.
Mhm.
and listening to spirituality conversations so far and talking about it through the lens of redemption, I'm able to talk about it with everybody and no one's offended. Everyone's excited. Everyone's on their journey because what I like for my work to do is, how we talk a lot about silos, but I like to build a bridge to your silo. That,
Mhm.
I want to knock on the door and say, Krista, can I get in and see what you're cooking? What do you know? Or Krista, my resilience is low today. Can I borrow some of yours? Like,
Mhm.
I'm Krista, it's gonna cost 50 cents to go, to this. Can I get I'm a quarter short. Okay.
Mhm.
We need to build bridges to these silos. We need to have this dialogue in terms of what I want leadership redemption to do. It's just a bridge from one place to the next. It's just a portal for you to understand that the answer is right among you. It's up under your nose, as because crisis try to make me feel like I was done for. It
Mhm.
tried to make me disaster, laying in that hospital bed with the stroke, just all the medicine. I felt like I was not coming back. So that's when I start putting pen to paper and doing more to try to bring this work to the public. And coming to Harvard, I try to do all I could, write as much as I could, talk to as many people as I could, because it felt like I was on a timeline. Now that the project is been documented and being able to have this leg of the race to collaborate, enter levels of refinement and listen to become a student to the work, I'm understanding more of how urgent this needs to be in the lives and in the hands of schools, in the hands of organizations, in the hands of businesses, so they can begin these dialogues. And acceptance, levels of acceptance needs to come so that we are on one accord when we are trying to lead the change in crises. And I
Mhm.
think of this, and I'll end with this, not in the podcast because we're about to end it, but I'll end with saying that if you can imagine in a crisis, everybody's broken, not just one, not just two people. Everybody has been impacted. When Legacy School of Performing Arts was impacted, it hit it hit the entire community I'm in, right?
Mhm.
But that meant every board member was impacted. So when it was time to make tough decisions, it was hard to call upon them to make decisions because they're trying to clean up rubble too. So
Mhm.
it taught me the purpose of diversifying and making larger connections and expanding. Because if I have a board member that may be in a part or region that didn't get in a hurricane, at least we were able to have that as a version of sustaining impact. Or at least we were able to have someone who can see and hear on our behalf when we're down in the rubble trying to dig ourselves out. So
Mhm.
all in all, as we review for you, as I love to take you all into a review, Krista came to the table of redemption because of her friend, me. Bottom line,
Yep.
what she has on the table is so many great concepts, ideas, ideologies, philosophies, one being race, culture, ethnicity, and its dynamic in the education sector and beyond. She also gave us insight into her upbringing in terms of how she garnered her resilience and being next to the ocean, also in Los Angeles. Well, let's just say California. I don't know if it was Los Angeles or not, but I know it's California, right? And then she talked about elements of people in her family that help her stay connected. As we went on in the podcast, she gave us insights on resilience. And for Krista, resilience has a lot to do with your mental and physical and spiritual well-being. In other words, community connectivity. Your resilience is not just an inner fight, but it's an external bond that you need to have to keep yourself put together and as whole as possible so that you can continue this work. When we talked about sustaining impact or burnout, Crystal was just basically painting a picture that it's kind of hard to measure your burnout when you burn out. You just burn out. I mean, and some people burn out at both ends, right? That they don't know really how to gauge and how to stop. When she talked about when your leader says, "Oh, don't burn out." What do you mean don't burn out. We have the standardized test coming up in a few weeks. What do you mean, right? So I'm her animated side. Okay, that's what I'm being. Okay. We both in the arts, okay? So then she goes on to paint another picture when I ask about human intuition. She talked about it's kind of like hard to know, it's hard to be in touch with your intuition if you don't know yourself or if you're not in touch with yourself. I mentioned that it's kind of like your intuition is unplugged. She mentioned it's kind of like the volume is turned down. So some of the solutions is kind of like stepping away a little bit and coming more in tune with yourself, especially if you're on the front line leading this work that we're talking about. Next, we discuss lifespan, and she called it lifespan, well span, health span, all the other spans. But what she taught me today was in between my theory and what research is calling end of life care and health care is a span of time. But what she gave me a opportunity to do was visually see a bridge in between and how you're going to do that in your quality of life in your day-to-day interactions. Another thing she talked about that was so critical was the fact that when we're having all of this conversation, all this dialogue, we have to keep in mind the people that are furthest from opportunity. That when we're talking about massages, healthcare, wellness, all this stuff, vacations, oceans and stuff, there are populations of people who cannot do that no matter what we talk about here. So we need to be about the business of being more humble, rushing. We need to be about the business of just kind of like slowing down just a little bit more so we can bring people into a world, right? That we understand that we are all a part of the same journey in many respects. As we talked about spirituality, Krista was here to talk about it as a language that we all speak or can speak. And basically, some opt in, some opt out. But nonetheless, to me, it is one of the fastest way for us to understand the DNA, what I call the spiritual DNA of what you have on your hands as a leader and what you're able to dissect and divulge and be able to, I call, build a fortress around the work through a spiritual dimension that's bigger than you. I learned from you, Krista, about Christian Science. That's not one I've heard before. And I learned how you, in your eclectic background, to me, in the arts, in research, in um cultural backgrounds in terms of even your partner being that, and I'm sure we have another session just talk about what that's like, and having these interracial and also across domains, what it would look like for a new lexicon of a leader to be born. And that's really what this leadership redemption framework and the Table of Redemption podcast does. I want to bring leaders here to help me paint a better picture so that when we are trying to save lives and change lives at the end of the day, we don't forget that we are a life that need to be changed too. So, Krista, at the end of the podcast, I always ask guests 3 questions, and you can ask them in any order, or you may just not want to answer all 3, whatever. But one, is there anything new that you're taking away from the table? Number 2, is there any final words you're leaving on the table? And number 3, what words of wisdom, inspiration that you have for me as I continue my journey in making sure I bring the leadership redemption to the world in the best way I know how?
All right, I'll answer number two first because I
Okay.
think the words that I'm leaving are hopefully community and connection.
Okay.
And I feel like I've taken so many things from this conversation, and I think they're gonna be coming to me over the next couple of days. I think the thing that's coming to me right now is the moment that this conversation is happening in and the work that you're putting in to this to the spiritual dimensions of this conversation. I think um, I'm so grateful and I'm excited to listen to what other people are saying. And I'm so impressed too, just as your friend, like
Yay.
yeah, how you're just going forward on this with so much um, sparkle. Um,
Yes, Macara Sparkle.
and I think the last question was, thoughts I have for you,
Yeah, any words of wisdom, journey, any
words of wisdom.
or edificate, anything, any words of encouragement or anything in your heart that you want to say.
Um, I think a hope, I guess, I will have for you is that you are finding ways to stay connected to your artistic practice. I
Oh,
think especially because what you were sharing about that being a toolkit that you can use to bring power to other people, spiritual power, spiritual joy to other people. And I'm hoping that that is something that you're able to continue for yourself.
I'm about to cry, actually. I felt that so deep in me because it's been so difficult to rebuild and not look at the arts as something that like a burial or something, because it was my entire life. I was awarded, rewarded for the arts. I mean, in a major way. Then when the hurricane hit and my body went down, I felt like I failed something. So you are reviving hope in me with those words of encouragement. You're actually setting a fire in my heart from one artistic lens to another. And that is, I've not had anyone say that to me so far. And that is, you know how you said multiple times, I've been thinking about that. And you've said multiple times, I've been wanting to prioritize your resiliency. I've actually been playing the piano. I actually have been getting up, doing my vocal warm-ups and doing all the things that I have been doing years ago. And that's a sign right there that a spiritual awakening is happening. And
Mhm,
I love the way you put it as a spiritual practice to be able to get back to that as well,
mhm,
in its full form. I feel like getting this framework documented is opening that artistic door. So it's almost like I had to travel through certain pockets and towns to get right back to the stage. And that, I think that would be my ultimate redemption.
mhm.
That would be my ultimate form of redemption. But we will hopefully, with all the powers that be, right? You will be there to see it. That's what I
So
would.
I can see a vision of when the podcast is in its full form that one of the advertisements on the podcast is your shows. You can, you know
Wow.
how they have ads in
Yes.
podcasts?
Consider it done, hun. This is really good. This is really, really, really good. I'm definitely gonna do that because I'm trying to be humble. I'm trying to be like, just whatever. But that's a really good way to advertise and make sure. Other people have asked me about fundraising. Why have I not put up anything once about rebuilding legacy fundraising? Because the building itself on the inside needs to be a build back. So we have the externals done and new roof and stuff like that, and done all that. But the build back on the inside and getting the organization back is something that I'm going to do. So I'm actually might put up an ad for that. Anybody want to support that? And probably do a concert or something for the people.
Yeah.
Hey, okay, Krista, gotcha.
And then advertise it on your podcast.
And I would do that. Awesome. So everyone, I hope that you felt so loved today. I hope that we gave you a peek into our relationship, our bond, and it was filled with academia when we were at Harvard. It was filled with just us being colleagues, also transparent with one another. I remember her questioning the framework and also being able to be encouraging about the framework, also being at the presentation of the framework, and then also seeing the video that Harvard covered on the framework. And so, and she was in class when I had a breakthrough. I said, "We just need to make the frame work." You remember that?
I do.
Because in my mind, I was just having a difficult time making the frame work Framework design is very challenging. It is so challenging. So when you see the pillars up there, that took about 20 years plus my time at Harvard to figure out the right combination, the right set of skills, and the right way to build an intersection when I'm talking to people of all backgrounds, all races, all religions, all socioeconomic statuses, to be able to make sure you all feel love, see love, and understand that more is always possible. So I always end by saying, at this table, I hope you've been well fed, being fed by intellectual excellence, being fed by knowledge and wisdom that we dropped so many good gems, being fed about with me and Krista's humor and our love and our laughter, being fed with actual hope and passion for yourself and something you're actually going to do. I also hope that you order what you want. Order up your own goals, your own dreams, and do it as boldly as possible, because there's no dream police or there's no redemption police. There's no one that's going to arrest you if you get up today and do what it is you're supposed to do. So my thing is, so what's going to get you to my table of redemption? What will bring you here? I want to know. I want to see your work. I want to see what you're doing, even in the midst of crises, to change humanity, change someone else's life. But mostly, I'm here to give birth to a new lexicon of leader, to say, I want to see how you changed your life. So signing off as Rasheen Jameson Richardson, saying thank you for being a captive audience today, and goodbye.
Bye.